Continuing with learning Hebrew, we are in chapter 3 of the first Hebrew primer, and we're going to learn about Shiva, some odd vowels, and the concept of Dagesh. We already learned most of the vowels. Kamatz, which is A or sometimes O. We learned Patach, which is A, always. We learned Chirik, E. We learned Tsere, E. And Segol, which Sephardim pronounce the same as Tsere, E. And we learned Cholam, O. And Shuruk or Kubutz, U. Today we're going to learn about Shva. Shva is written with two dots under a letter. And there are two kinds of Shva. There is Shva that you pronounce just the short sound of the consonant. So we call such as Shva silent, or we call it in Hebrew Shva nach. And there is Shva which is makes the sound of the consonant with a little extension, like short E, and that we call Shva na. And there are rules. When do you say Shva nach or Shva na? When it's a shorter sound and when it's a little bit longer sound. So the longer sound, a lot of people pronounce more like Segol, but it should be a little bit shorter. So a Shva at the beginning of a Hebrew word is always pronounced with a longer sound than a regular Shva. That's a Shva na. For example, they give you two English words. You would not say mrun, you would say merun. Merun. And same with lagoon. Now let's practice with the following words. Let's start with Yaakov.
Keli.
Right. Keli. And next one?
Neum.
Neum. Very good. Avram?
Ketav.
Ketav. Good.
I'm sorry, Lagoon, Neum. This one, Ketav. Ketav.
Next one?
Shema.
Shema, right? We don't say Shema, Israel, we say Shema. And Alex?
Mechal.
Mechal, yes, good. And I'll read the next. Me'od and Selah, right? People who don't pay attention, they would read these words incorrectly, like Slah, right? But really it's supposed to be Selah. The Shva at the end of the word is always silent. It's Shva nach, and it is not pronounced at all. You have already seen this under the final form of the letter Chaf, like Bach, Shat, right? We don't say Bache, we say Bach. So let's read the following line. Yaakov?
Lach.
Good. At.
Charat.
Charat.
Elech.
Good. And Alex?
Ma.
Ma.
What the last one?
Mat. And then Derech and Ach. Abo, we are on page 16, we just finished, and now we're going to page 17. We continue learning Shva. We learned that Shva is always longer in the beginning of the word, like Shema Yisrael, and it's always short at the end of the word, like Bach or Lach. Now, what about Shva in the middle of the word? So Shva in the middle of the word has rules. It's sometimes longer and sometimes shorter. When a Shva appears alone in the middle of a word, it usually falls at the end of a syllable and is not pronounced. Like Mitlof. It's not mitelof, meatloaf. It's a short T.
If it's right after a syllable, it's more like silent. So you're saying.
Yeah, if it finishes a syllable, it's a short, quick shva. Carpool, carpool, not like that, but carpool. Concave, right? Now let's practice. Yaakov.
Yistem.
It's a shin.
Yistem.
It's a shin.
Oh, yishtem.
Shit.
Yes. Yishte. Bechor.
Nafalnu.
Nafalnu. Good. Abo. Good. Mincha. Abraham.
Evne.
Evne. Good.
Anshe.
Anshe. And the last one.
This M.
Te.
Sat.
Sam. Te.
Samtem.
Yeah. Samtem. Good. This is one rule. It's most of the time it works that if shva is alone, it finishes a syllable. It's quick, silent shva. However, when you have two shvas next to each other in the middle of the word, the first shva is short, silent, and the second one is a little bit longer, like consummate. Right? You don't say consummate. Consummate. Read the following line aloud, Yaakov.
Yechitevu.
No, the first one is short, the second one is longer.
So yechtevu.
Right. Yichtevu.
Kadshecha.
Kad shecha.
Kadshecha.
Right. You don't have emphasis over here, so you read it as kadshecha. But the emphasis should be on the last syllable, and so kadshecha instead of kadshecha.
Well, how would you know that?
In Tehillim we have the word.
Right, in Tanakh, when you read the Torah or Tehillim or in Siddur, usually they put the emphasis, you know where it is. But here they don't, so you just have to, from experience. Kod shecha.
Kadshecha.
Code, like a
Yeah,
law.
because, right, we didn't learn these rules yet, but here you would say kod instead of kad. Here the kamatz will be pronounced as o, like chochma, kod shecha. Abo?
Before I go, I just have a question. When you say kod shecha, could that be elongated, or is that only for Sephardim?
Which sound is elongated?
In the word kod shecha, the first, I think it's called the kamatz, right?
Yes,
First,
here the kamatz becomes o, yes. It's some Ashkenazim do that, and Sephardim are supposed to change this to o.
would it be elongated to indicate that it's an o?
In some Sidurim, they would change the shape of this kamatz. They would either make it bold or they would make it elongated. Yes. Uvdivrei kodshecha katuv lemor. So now read the third word.
Yishmeru.
Good. Yishmeru. Right? Not yishmeru, but yishmeru. Avraham?
Tilbashu.
Tilbishu. Good.
Raglechem.
Raglechem. Right? And Alex, read the first word.
First on the same line.
Yes.
V.
It's a chaf.
Yeah. The first word, right?
Yes.
So second letter is V.
It's a chaf.
Chaf.
Ch.
Yeah. Yehi. No, Yich. The third letter now.
Taf.
Keep on. Yichata.
It's a vet.
Yet. Yichata. V.
Vu.
Vu.
With the vowel. Yich tevu.
Yichtevu.
Yichtevu. Okay, now we have reading practice. Read the following lines aloud. Each shva here in this exercise is a silent vowel. Silent, also read the same word to yourself, and then when your turn comes, you'll read it out loud. This way you're going to have a lot of practice. Yaakov?
Yishmor, Yizkor.
Good. Now,
The two words.
yeah,
Yifkod, Malchei.
good. Avraham?
Anshe Israel.
Anshe Yisrael. Let Abona?
Minyan, Atzi.
Good. And Kobe?
יכתוב כנפי עבדי יגדל.
Good. Alex?
Let me skip Rabbi for now, because
Okay.
a few letters I don't understand. Yeah, I'll just try to
Okay.
catch up here.
Now, in the next sentence, the shva that we have is a longer shva, shva na, and that is because it's at the beginning of
The word.
the word. Now, Yaakov, first two words,
Demei Peri.
good,
Melo, Vedor,
very good. Abo,
Lesem, Shemi.
good. Avraham,
Kedosh Yesod.
good. And Kobe,
יסוד בני שמור וגד.
yes. And then I'll read the rest. Ketubah, Beli, and Yemei. Now, in each of these words, the first shva is silent, and the second shva is pronounced with a short, slurred sound. So this is example of when two shvas are together. Yaakov,
Yishpeto.
Yishpetu,
Or Yishpetu. Tame.
Tim,
Timtseu.
good. And read one more.
Shivtecha.
Good. Not Shivtecha, but Shivtecha,
Why is it shift? Oh, it's shift.
because the emphasis is on the
שבטך.
last syllable. Shivtecha. Bechor,
Tiftechu,
good.
Nichretu,
Nichretu, good.
Tishmeru.
Tishmeru, very good. Abo, can share.
We started.
Mishpe, yes.
Nichretu. Tishmeru. Tishpechot.
Good. Avraham from Lamed.
Lechtecha is.
Lech, Techa,
Lechtecha. Ismechu. Misbechot.
Mizbechot, and Kobi,
נזכרו, נמצאו ממלכות.
Mamlechot. Good. And now let's give a chance to Eliyahu. Read first three words on that paragraph.
ישפטו, תמצאו,
Timtseu.
תמצאו, שבטך.
Good. Now we turn the page 18. We learned some, they're called combination vowels. Some letters, like Hey, Ayin, Hey, Het, and Aleph, are difficult to pronounce with Shva alone. In words where these four letters have a Shva, another vowel is added to the Shva to make it easier to pronounce the syllable. So when Shva appears next to the Patach, A, or next to Segol, E, it sounds like a hurried A or E. A shorter sound A or E to make it easy for you to pronounce. For example, the first one, if you have Shva, it becomes Shva with a Segol, so you have 5 dots. And then it's not like E, but it's like a short E. So the example of it is Ayin Dalid, Ed, and with the 2 dots, with a Shva plus Segol, becomes Ed. And if you have a Shva that we attach Patach to, it becomes, instead of Ad, it becomes Ad, right? And in Hebrew, it's called Chataf Patach, means a snatched Patach, means a fast Patach. Okay, now, next when a shva appears next to the vowel of kamatz, it sounds like o in low. So instead of ad, we would read odd. Instead of, right, as in low. Now let's read the following line aloud. Let's start with Eliyahu.
אני
Good, that's it.
עושה
One word at a time. Ani, right? So in the word ani, you don't say ani, you say ani. A short a. Ani. Yaakov,
Aseh.
aseh, right. A fast aseh.
Aseh.
Bechor,
Chazak.
chazak. Yes. Abo, hadas. Good. Avraham.
Aniya.
Read again.
Aniya.
When you have kamatz with a shva, it turns into o.
Oniya.
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 The boat.
A boat means, right. And Kobe?
Naomi
Good. Naomi.
is a girl's name, right? Naomi?
Yes, it's a girl's name. Naomi.
But does it mean anything else besides that? Besides
It means a pleasant one. Yeah. Naim.
pleasant? That's what it means?
Naim.
Oh, Naim.
Naim. And that's why, even though it's spelled with a kamatz, we don't say Naami, we say Naomi. And I'll read the last. Adon, Emet, and Oni.
Is this only 4?
Yes. Lechem Oni, we say. We don't say Lechem Ani, we say Lechem Oni. Syllables. A Hebrew syllable always begins with a consonant. Right? Unlike other languages where you can have a word beginning with a vowel, but in Hebrew it must begin with a consonant. It consists either of a consonant plus a vowel, like a shin with a kamatz makes the sound of sha. We don't say ash, we say sha. Or a consonant plus another vowel, plus a vowel plus another consonant, which means two consonants with a vowel between them. So a syllable can either have one consonant or it can have two consonants, similar to English, like tish, tav plus shin with a chirik in between becomes tish. It is often easier to read Hebrew words that have many letters when they're broken down into syllables. So if you see a word that you don't recognize, first break it into syllables. One consonant or two consonants, and then read. For example, the word tamid. First identify that since there is a vowel under taf and there is a vowel under mi, so it means there are two different consonants. You cannot have two vowels for the same consonant. So therefore, it's two consonants, ta and then mid. Right? Dalit doesn't have a vowel, so it's part of the previous consonant. Syllable. Ta, mid, or elim. Haaretz becomes three syllables. Ha-a-retz. And shomeret becomes also three syllables. Shomeret. We'll go to page 19. Syllables and shva. In most cases, a silent shva indicates the end of a syllable. And that makes sense. That's why we call it shva. Nach means it's the end of a syllable. Like yitz hak. Right? Even though you might say, we said you cannot have two vowels for the same syllable, and shva is a vowel, but shva is an exception. Shva indicates end of the syllable, even though it's the second vowel. Yitz, hak, mish, pat, yis, ra'el. when the shva becomes a proper vowel, and then it is a syllable by itself. Like ge is a syllable by itself, do la, gedola, le had lik, be ve ti. And this is logical that when two shvas are next to each other, the first shva is the end of the previous syllable, and the second shva is the beginning of a new syllable. Like mish pe hot. Mish pe hot, the first is the end, mish, the second one is beginning, pe hot. Yiz ke ru. Tich te vi. Now, we mentioned the idea of an emphasis. It's more correctly called accent. Hebrew words are normally pronounced with the accent on the last syllable. Unlike English, where the accent is on the first syllable. For example, in English we say Michael. In Hebrew we say Michael at the end. We don't say Michael. We don't say Michael, not the middle. We say Michael. Or Avraham, unlike Abraham. Right?
What about in the case of Yericho?
Same. Yericho.
In English, Jericho. Okay.
Jericho. Right. In English, we pronounce it with the first syllable. In Hebrew, last syllable. That's most of the time. But of course, there are exceptions. And many times you do pronounce, you do put accent on a first syllable or the last syllable or the middle syllable, and it will be indicated if you have chumash. Usually where the trop is, that's where the accent is. If the trop is on the last letter, it's the last, first, middle. In a book where you don't have trop, you don't have the accent symbol, you have to remember it or try to figure it out. So let us practice. Yaakov, read the first one.
Avraham. That one. Which one?
Yeah, this one. Read it correctly.
Avraham.
Abraham.
Yeah, read it quickly as one word.
quickly. Oh, Avraham.
Yeah, just have to make sure the accent is on the last syllable.
Oh, okay. So how do I do that?
Avraham, as opposed to Avraham.
Oh, okay. Avraham.
Yes. Bechor.
Yaakov.
Right. Again, as opposed to saying Yaakov, the proper way is to say
At the end.
Yaakov. Yaakov. Abo? Va'anachnu. Good. Now you see the accent symbol that they use is a less than sign.
Is this only used in this book or?
And some Sidurim also they use it. Yeah.
Now, when you're reading the Torah, the actual script, would it also
No.
would there be something to
No,
indicate something
in
you
a-
should know?
Yeah, in a Sefer Torah it wouldn't. In this Chumash, it would use the trop. Wherever the trop is, the trop can be on top of the letter, on the bottom of the letter of the word. It would not use this symbol. This symbol would be used in textbooks maybe. Va'anachnu, right? Because the accent is on a nach syllable, right? That's what you emphasize. Va'anachnu.
Rabbi, there's no problem saying wa'anachnu?
For Sephardim, it would be correct. But again, depending who you're talking to, they might not understand you. If you're among people who say va, and it's not part of prayer where you have to be extra careful, then make it easier for them and say va instead of wa. And now next one, Avraham.
Adaber.
Adaber, good. Yeah, follow Adaber. Eliyahu.
Mashlichim.
Mashlichim, good. And
I'm skipping.
Yaakov, you have a hard one.
Okay. Babayich.
Good. Babayich, right? The accent is on the second ba. Babayich. Now, we have some odd vowels and some exceptions. Usually we say this, the consonant is pronounced first and then the vowel, but there are a couple cases where the vowel is pronounced before the consonant, and that is when you have a letter het at the end of the word and it has a patach under it. And you pronounce the vowel first, ah, and only then the consonant h, ah, like ko-ah and ru-ah. Now, here there are different customs of how to pronounce. Israelis would pronounce it as I did now, ko-ah or ru-ah. But according to Sephardi custom, you're really supposed to put a W sound in there. Ko-wah, ru-wah. That would be a more correct. Ko-wah, ru-ah, ru-wah. As if there is a W in there.
That's when they say Ruach HaKodesh,
Yes,
right?
yes. Ruach HaKodesh. Now let's start with Eliyahu.
Noach.
Good? Yaakov?
Shaba.
Shabbat.
Shabeach.
Shabeach. Very good. By the way, Eliyahu, where did you put the accent?
Noach.
Right, see,
At the
it's
end, right?
it's on no.
Okay.
No.
Noach.
Oh, okay.
Noach.
Oh, it's above the no.
Right. Noach.
Noach.
Bechor.
Sameach.
Sameh. No, here you don't put Sameh.
Sameach.
Yeah, either it's an exception or something. I never heard Sameh Wah.
So where
Although,
do you know
maybe I don't know.
where do you know then where to add the W sound?
Well, I guess or u. Ko Wah.
Oh, I see.
Wah.
I see.
Or
Okay.
the O
Maybe
is found
maybe
in
maybe
the
things that could be spelled with a vav,
I see.
like u or o can be spelled with a vav, and that vav, whether it's there or it's invisible, makes the sound w,
I see.
because we know the vav does make the sound w.
Okay.
Ko Wah, Ruwah,
Sameach.
Noah, Shabe'ach, right? Without wah. Shabe'ach, Sameh, Sameach. But again, you say Sameach as opposed to Sameach, right? The accent is on the second vowel. Sameach. Abo,
Mashiach.
good. Mashiach. Now here is another difference between modern Israelis and Sephardim. According to modern Israelis, you would pronounce it as Mashiach, Mashiach. But according to Sephardim, the more correct way is to pronounce it with a ye, to pronounce the yud. Mashiach, Mashiach, Mashiach. And next one, you use the same rule.
Shaliach.
Shaliyah, yes. Instead of Shaliach, Shaliyah. Shaliyah. And Eliyahu?
Soleach.
Soleach. Right. And some would even put a yud in here also. Soleach. Soleach. A similar rule, you'll notice some Chazanim say by Shomea, instead of saying Shomea, they say Shomeya. They put a yud in there also. So you'll see differences, but know that it is proper. On page 20, the vowel patach, a, and the yud is pronounced as I, ayel, like my or bow tie, bow tie. So even though the yud doesn't have a vowel, but we pronounce it. Let's start with Yaakov now.
Okay. Alai. Banai.
Yes.
Avotai.
Avotai, good.
Is it not here, or I thought when you have the two dots in the that becomes an O.
No, that's
Ah,
That's with the kamatz. This is patach. Avotai.
Like odd.
And Avraham,
Dai.
dai. Good. And Eliyahu,
And I.
enai. Good. And Yaakov, last one.
Hi.
Good. High. And when you have a vowel or with a yud, it's pronounced as oi, like boy or soil. Read the following lines. Let's start with Bechor.
Goy.
Goy. Good. Abo.
Goyim.
Yes.
Hoi.
Hoi. And Eliyahu.
Oyev.
Oyev. And Yaakov.
Oyeve. Oive.
Oyeve. Good.
Do I say it one way, like oive?
Not Oive. Because
The emphasis.
or is a syllable on its own. It has already consonant aleph and vav. Or that's good enough. Ye is a syllable to itself. Ye and ve. Or ye ve.
Oive.
It's possible that Ashkenazim may read it as oive, but I think the more proper way is to say oyeve, which means enemies. I guess that's why they say oive, which means when enemies are attacking, you say oive. Bechor,
Avoy.
avoy, good. Now we learn about dagesh. A dagesh is a dot in the center of a letter. It may appear in most letters of the Hebrew alphabet and should be thought as part of the spelling of a word. It's not a vowel, it rather tells you something about the consonant. There are definite rules concerning the uses of every dagesh, but for the purposes of this text, we will discuss only the most important ones. Now, sometimes dagesh changes the way a letter is pronounced. Like letter bet with a dagesh, without dagesh it's vet. Letter taf, and according to Ashkenazim, saf or thaf. Pei and fei. The dagesh changes the way letter is pronounced. Sometimes the dagesh doesn't change the way letter is pronounced, like if there is dagesh in the letter mem, it's still a mem. Or lamed, it's still a lamed. So then why dagesh is placed there? So the reason for the dagesh over there is that really grammatically the letter should be doubled. There should have been two letters, like two mems or two lameds. And instead we make a dagesh, and this teaches you that you really should pronounce it with more emphasis. Let's say instead of ima, you say imma, or instead of kala, you say kala, with a lamed stronger, kala.
Because of the dagesh.
Because there is a dagesh inside.
So because of the dagesh, you know where the emphasis should be. You're saying.
The emphasis, what I mean by emphasis here, you pronounce it as if it was spelled with two lameds. Kala,
Two letters.
imma. You still say only one. You don't say imma, but imma. The mem becomes stronger, a longer mem.
Could they put two L's next to each other, or it's not possible grammatically?
It's possible.
It would be the same thing, right? Or two M's.
Yeah, it's sometimes
Kind of.
the word is spelled with more than one of the same letter next to each other. Sometimes three of the same letter next to each other. But sometimes the rules tell you that you only can write one letter, and instead of writing the second letter, you put a dagesh inside. So just keep in mind that there are different reasons for dagesh. The words beged kefet is used as a memory device for the combined letters in the beged kefet group, which means vet, gimel, daled spell out beged. Chaf, fei, and taf spell out kefet. These are 6 letters that are pronounced one way without dagesh and a different way with a dagesh. This is an example of letters that change the sound when dagesh is put. For example, vet turns into bet. Gimel was said sometimes by Yemenite, changes into Gimel, or some communities pronounced as Re instead of Re. So the sound changes, and De, even though we don't, but it's supposed to change. And some say it's maybe supposed to be The instead of De. The. Chaf, we know, it changes into Kaf. Fei changes into Pei. And Tese by Ashkenazim, Tefe by Yemenite, and some other Sephardim changes into The. So again, different communities lost the tradition of how to pronounce it. They follow the regular modern Israeli pronunciation, and they only change Vet, Chaf, and Fei. They don't change Gimel, Dalet, and Taf, and for now that's what we're gonna do also. But even though it's only Bet, Chaf, and Pei, so you should maybe really say Bakaf, but we don't do it because the rule stays the rule, and when Bezrat Hashem Mashiach comes and we find out what the correct pronunciation of each letter is, we're going to utilize all 6 letters. And they say a rule that even though you use a dagesh, it's only used for the language to sound better, for your tongue not to twist. Hebrew is a kind of language that if you don't know how to pronounce something, practice it a few times, say it in different ways, and usually the easiest way for your tongue to pronounce it, that will be the correct pronunciation. Hebrew is structured in such a way, I mean, this is the language that God made for human beings, and he built human beings to be able to pronounce it. So we didn't make rules and then build a language. The language was given to us, and now we're trying to figure out what the rules are. And we notice that Hebrew is built in such a way that it makes it easier for us to pronounce. Wherever it's easier, we put a dagesh. Wherever it's easier without dagesh, the dagesh is not placed. Like from here we can understand that at the beginning of a word, we have a dagesh, because it's easier to start a word with a stronger letter than with a softer letter. Let's go to page 21 until we get to exercises, and then the exercises we'll have for homework. 2 spelling rules. At the beginning of a word, a beged kefet letter usually takes a dagesh, like bayit, not vayit, but bayit. Gadol, even though we don't change it, but if you would spell it, you would put a dagesh in there. David, ketav. So here by ketav, you remember 2 rules. One is that the shva is a longer shva, ke, and that it's with a dagesh, it's ketav and not chetav. It's not chtav, it's ke and it's ke. Ketav. Peri. Peri. Torah.
So basically, when you're reading the Torah script, this would kind of also would help you, because you
Yes,
know.
knowing these rules would help you to read correctly, although there are exceptions. So then you would only remember the exceptions, you don't have to remember everything.
Right. Wow.
And at the end of a word, a beged kefet letter usually does not take a dagesh, because again, it's easier to end a word with a soft letter than a hard letter. It's easier to say av instead of saying ab. Hag, beged, melech instead of melech. Melech, af, emet.
Change Gimel, right?
Gimel we also don't change. In
So
a
the
simple
3 letters that we
Sephardi.
change, 3 letters we don't change, right?
Bakaf we change.
But Gimel we don't change.
Yeah, Gimel we don't. Bakaf.
Baka. He said ka.
Ah, okay.
And we have 5 guttural letters. Some of these you're going to be surprised by. We have 5 guttural letters, and these letters don't take dagesh, even though reish sometimes does, but as a general rule, these 5 letters don't take a dagesh, and you are supposed to use your throat when you're saying it. Most people now cannot pronounce them correctly, but you should strive to pronounce it the right way. One explanation for why a guttural cannot take a dagesh is that a dagesh often indicates doubling, and gutturals cannot be doubled. As it is, it's hard to pronounce one guttural letter. To pronounce 2, you might choke. Because they cannot take a dagesh, these letters upset normal spelling rules and create exceptions in grammar. When we learn about verbs, you will see that most exceptions have these letters in them. We will discuss these exceptions as they arise. It is important to memorize these 5 letters as a group. So we said that het is a guttural, het. Hey is also guttural, but because you don't strain your throat, it's just a exhaling air, it's easy guttural. Aleph, even though Aleph is a regular Aleph, but apparently it's supposed to be, it's like a hey with the ah sound. That you are using your throat, but you're not straining. As opposed to ayin, you have to use your throat. Ayin. And reish, I don't know how to say gutturally. Reish, like maybe a Yiddish reish, using your throat. Below are some examples of words divided into syllables. You're supposed to pronounce each syllable and then read the new word together. So do this at home, like she, nan, tam. She, nan, tam. Right? Next, exercise 2. Write out each of the following words in syllables. You can use a pencil and then just with a pencil draw a line to break this word into syllables and then pronounce the word. So this exercise, even though you can read the whole word together, but be patient and divide it to be able to recognize syllables. And now exercise 3, read the following words with odd endings. If you have trouble pronouncing them, review the endings on page 19 and 20. If you are not sure about something, mark it, and then during next class, or you can call me and we will go over them. Exercise 4, just to remind yourself, list the letters which always take dagesh, the 6 letters, at the beginning of the word.
But we don't need to know all 6, we just need to know 3, right?
Yes, but as a memory device, you have to know, and that will tell you, even though you don't pronounce it, but which letters you write the dagesh in. And exercise 5 is actually a writing exercise where you have to put dagesh yourself. This is an excellent exercise.
How would you know?
Yeah, how would you know that?
You use the rules. If it's beginning of a word and it's beged kefet
Oh, wow.
letters, you put a dagesh.
Because the first word would have a dagesh.
Yes.
The second
The
one would
last
not.
letter doesn't take dagesh.
Right. But the second letter, avotai, there is no dagesh in the first letter.
Right, because it's a
not-
guttural letter, right? We have 5 guttural letters, and then when they're in the beginning of a word, they would not have dagesh. And the exercise 6 is exactly about them. what are the 5 letters that don't take dagesh. Exercise 7.
Yeah.
Well, in the end we don't put, but you were just.
Exercise 7 is a funny exercise which has English sentences, funny English sentences written in Hebrew letters, and read and try to identify what is the message.
We have an exception, right, to that rule, where we don't put a dagesh at the end of the word. In Echad, Shema Yisrael, when we say Shema Yisrael, I think there's dagesh in Dalet,
The
right?
Dalet.
So there are exceptions.
Yes.
Okay.
And exercise 8 is the opposite. You have the English letters and now change it to write it in Hebrew. And write not only the consonants, write also vowels and dagesh where necessary. Okay, and the last exercise 9 are all real Hebrew words. Practice them a few times until you're comfortable with them. And exercise 9 goes all the way to the next page. Now here let's read the caution. Do not be disturbed if you are still reading Hebrew words haltingly, means with breaks and slowly. In first 3 chapters, it is not our intention to read fluently, but rather to simply acquaint you with the letters and pronunciation. Reading Hebrew will come more easily as you learn the language. However, if you want to improve your reading skills, we recommend a different book from this, or just practice Chumash, read the weekly Parsha in Hebrew, and that will and prayers that will improve your Hebrew reading very fast.
So the next chapter already the translations.
Yes, we're gonna start next chapter next week, so please spend time today, Monday and Tuesday to to do these exercises. Okay.